Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Happy Thursday. Before we get started in earnest, I just want to share something with you. And by the way, I have not mentioned this to producer Robbie at all, so it'll be a surprise. I hope a positive surprise for him, because it reflects on the good work that he does day to day here to bring excellent programming to each and every one of you listening, whether on air on KXNT or via podcast. So our numbers are in every once in a while. These ratings come through. I don't get hung up on them. They consistently are good and getting better, but we had an enormous boost last month. Our average share of audience went up 42%, 49% in weekly cum, and 24% in daily cum. This is unprecedented here. And look, I can't tell you how grateful I am to each and every one of you that listens, that makes this possible, that comes and says hello to me when I'm out and about here in Las Vegas. And I, for example, last night I was having a wonderful dinner over at Pisces, which is a new restaurant at the Wynn Hotel. I'm having a dinner with a couple of Washington guys, connected guys, friends of mine. I won't name them by name, but you know, names you'd recognize. And I'm having a nice dinner, and a wonderful waiter comes by, Richard, to say hello, and we begin talking, and he stops. He goes, "Are you Sam?" I think, okay, I mean, of course, my name is, my picture's on billboards all around town. I'm on TV a lot. I'm not being boastful, just a fact. So anyway, I thought, okay, he goes, "I listen to your show every day. Thank you for everything that you do." And many of you have come up to me to say things similar. So I'm just grateful. I'm humbled. I don't know that I deserve this, but I'm deeply moved by this, and will continue to do my utmost best to deliver the best possible program that we can, day in and day out, right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So, Robbie, there it is. I didn't share it with you in the moment, but I hope you forgive me for that. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. There we go. Now, let's talk for a minute about Iran. What we did, and I told you folks this would happen, the more information that came out over time would probably paint a picture, I said, of excellence by work done by our military. And so today, earlier today, the Pentagon held a briefing with Pete Hegseth and General Dan Caine, and they got into some of the details of the attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities. Midnight Hammer was the name of the operation. And my heart, watching this, my heart swelled with pride for our country. I didn't know this. I didn't know that we had been preparing for this mission for 15 years. There was a highly classified program, likely a special access program, with development and testing for a weapon which, at the time that we identified this facility, at the time that the Israelis and the U.S. intelligence services said, "Look, we've got this Fordow site. We have, it's X amount of yards, feet, whatever, underground. It's fortified in all these different ways. This is all the stuff that's going on." We recognized we didn't have the weapon to get through it, to penetrate it, and a weapon, together with the Pentagon, specifications for a weapon were put into development, and a weapon was created ultimately that could get the job done. This isn't something that was operationalized on the back of a napkin Okay, in a cab, in an Uber on the way to the Situation Room in the White House. Years went into this. There were 2 DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers, who lived this single target for years, dedicated to it full time. Chairman Joint Chiefs General Dan Caine said that after the mission, these 2 officers described their hearts being filled with pride to be part of this mission. Now, one thing I want to point out is the bomb existed under Biden. Biden could have taken care of this. Biden didn't. That's interesting in and of itself. And it also shows that some of this must have been in development during Trump's first term, but Trump opted instead to pinch the Iranians where it hurts via money. But the 4 years between Trump's efforts in his first presidency, his first administration, and the ensuing Biden years gave the Iranians apparently enough leash, enough slack, enough resources that they were able to make progress that could no longer be stopped simply by choking off funds. So that's what precipitated the strike. Now, General Caine, Dan Caine, Raisin Caine, explained how the missiles, worked. One of the things that was interesting is that you had these ventilation shafts, and the Iranians got a little sneaky, apparently, and they tried to cover the shafts up by putting concrete caps on them. Now, this would not have been, I'll call it a long-term solution, because, of course, if you've got a site underground, one thing you do not have underground, generally speaking, unless you find a way to get it there, is oxygen. So every bunker requires some form of oxygen supply. You can only provide so much from tanks, so you have to have somewhere, a ventilation shaft, and that shaft has to be fortified, but at some point it leads down, ultimately to the bunker. And so the intel people identified these ventilation shafts. They found them. They knew where they were. The Iranians knew that we knew where they were. And they tried to cover them up with, putting what I assume, it sounds like to me, basically slabs of concrete on top of them. So what did we do? Well, first we fired a lighter bomb. Again, forgive me, I'm not going to give this to you very technically. I'm trying to break it down here. There's some sort of an ordnance on it that blew off the cap. And then, that was the first round, weapons 2, 3, and 4, and 5 entered the main shaft, traveling at 1,000 feet per second. And it went down in there. It went straight into the underground mission center and blew it to smithereens. Weapon 6, with flex capability, went in after that. And the kill mechanism was a combination of the blast and overpressure on the target. This is incredible. It was very well planned. I think this is in part why you saw the levels of irritation yesterday, day before, and certainly today at this press conference by both Trump and Pete Hegseth when pressed by members of the idiotic mainstream media for definitive proof that this mission was in fact successful. I'm going to play some clips from this when we come back. It's nothing short of remarkable. And frankly, reading this, listening to it, watching this transpire fills my heart with pride. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Folks, The winning just doesn't stop. I don't know how else to put this, but things are going great for the good old US of A. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Welcome back to the What's Right show. So the European Union apparently now is considering lowering tariffs on the U.S. to appease President Trump after the visit the last couple days in the Netherlands at The Hague, where Trump met with our European allies, won them over by all accounts, getting even from the concession to promise over 10 years to gradually increase their defense spending, not to just 2%, as was the previous threshold. They weren't even meeting that, by the way, but to exceed that to 5%, again, over 10 years with incremental steps along the way, verifiable steps that those investments are being made. Big, big news. So things just keep looking better and better. The press conference, I want to get to this here and stay on it because the Pentagon held a press conference to talk about the success of the nuclear strikes. Remember, the media has been invested lock, stock, and barrel in trash talking the success. Now, one thing I try to do here on this program is be a realist, and I'm not just here to always look at the best case scenario and the best possible, outcome. And I admittedly, right, in the very beginning, news is scarce. It's silly to believe that it was 100% a success. It's also silly to believe initially that it was, an 85, 90% failure, which is what CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times were trying to spin. So now we have a press conference. We have some key information coming out. The more I hear, the more I am confident of the fact that this has, this situation has been, was radically, the outcome of it was radically better than what anybody really had thought, frankly, even me. And there's two parts of what was being reported. One was the attack on the nuclear sites, on the 3 nuclear sites, which included Fordow. And the other part of it that got reported is the 44 service members who defended the American base that was attacked by Iran. The members there were between 28 years old, 21 to 28 years old. They had 2 minutes apparently to succeed or fail. And it was the single largest Patriot missile engagement in U.S. history. According to General Raisin Caine, they absolutely crushed it. It's unbelievable. Then imagine you're a family member of one of the B-2 bombers, one of the pilots. This is active duty Air Force and National Guard. They said goodbye to their families on last Friday, not knowing the outcome, when or, if, honestly, they would return, flying such a long mission deep over enemy territory. On Sunday, the teams returned. Tears flowed with families who said that it felt like the Super Bowl. I don't know. To me, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And you can see why Trump would get irritated at every one of these CNN, blabbermouth idiots going, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure it was? We've got a report here that says it wasn't a success. And by the way, they get into this a little bit here at the press conference because Pete Hegseth really lost it at a particular moment when he gets asked about these preliminary reports that came out. These preliminary reports. This was his answer to it.
Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment, a linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet And still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful.
Then Pete Hegseth goes on to quote other people about the severity of the damage at the nuclear sites in Iran following last week's stealth bombing raid by brave American airmen.
The DIA that put that report out says this is a preliminary low-confidence report and will continue to be refined as additional intelligence becomes available. How about the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission? The devastating U.S. strikes on Fordow destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. Have any of these quotes made their way into the New York Times or the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN? Any of these quotes? How about this one? This is a new one from the UN, the United Nations. No friend of the United States, or certainly Israel often. Here's the head of the UN Atomic Energy Agency this morning, Rafael Grossi. U.S. and Israeli strikes caused enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Don't take my word for it. How about the IDF's chief of staff? I can say here that the assessment is that we significantly damaged the nuclear program, setting it back by years. I repeat, years. The Iranian foreign minister, the spokesman, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged, that's for sure. I'm sure that's an understatement. John Radcliffe, the director of the CIA, putting out a statement just last night. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable, very different than preliminary assessment with low confidence. He's saying historically reliable and accurate source and method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years.
So you have here 10 or so on the record sources from different agencies, different countries even, the UN to boot. And you're taking all of these sources and what, if you're CNN, you are placing a higher order of credibility or weight on an anonymous source, an anonymous leaker, and, low confidence source, certainly. Okay, and a reporter who has a, credibility problem going back the better part of a decade? Give me a break. Here is General Raisin Caine talking about the kind of the story behind the victory of this attack.
There's an organization in the U.S. called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. DTRA does a lot of things for our nation, but DTRA is the world's leading expert on deeply buried underground targets. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordow, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target. Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it.
This wasn't some hokey thing put together quickly. 15 years of planning and of observation. And all CNN can do is go, we got a source. We got a source. Be right back after this, folks. Rarely wrong, always right. Unlike CNN, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome back. What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. At What's Right Sam on X, on Twitter, as it was once called. Of course, my email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. Okie dokie, the CNN people, speaking of these clowns, bozos, they are, well, how do I put this nicely? They are trying to get themselves out of a bit of a hole. And I'm not talking about a little hole. I'm talking about a Fordow-sized crater. A deep shaft. which is what they deserve to get after this charade, this anti-American diatribe that they've been on. Here is a CNN host today, Kate Boldan, Sarah Sidner, talking about these preliminary low-confidence reports, desperate to explain this away.
We do need to make clear that despite the emotional speech and outrage from the defense secretary, what he said about the DIA assessment is what CNN reported on. His issue that he took about it being preliminary, about it being low confidence. CNN reported on all of this. I was looking back just to make sure that we had it all throughout the reporting process. CNN had reported that it is preliminary and, of course, can be updated, including these two parts. It is still early, we reported in our initial report, for the U.S. to have a comprehensive picture of the impact of the strikes. None of the sources described how the DIA assessment compares to the views of other agencies in the intelligence community. The U.S. is continuing to pick up intelligence, including from within Iran, as they assess the damage. Also in CNN reporting, where the secretary took real issue and seemed very upset about it not being stated that there was low confidence stated in this DIA assessment. It's also in CNN reporting, including this. The final U.S. military battle damage assessment by the DIA could take days or even weeks to complete. Multiple sources familiar with the Pentagon's process told CNN. The initial DIA analysis was produced just 24 hours after the attack, according to one of the sources, because it was only a preliminary analysis. Its judgments were low confidence, the sources said.
It is literally what he said we did not report.
It is a preliminary report. The reporting was done.
Yeah.
The problem with this is that everything she just says here is complete bullcrap. CNN is flat out lying in this clip about their own report because they're using a version of the report that was updated yesterday, Wednesday afternoon, and they were pretending literally in this clip that it was what was in the original reporting. By reading the most up-to-date version of the CNN report, where it says the information was low confidence and preliminary, she made it seem that they had qualified this very poorly sourced story in a way that was fully transparent with the readership and viewership audience. So you can hear Sidner in there chiming in. It's in there. It's literally what he said. But Bertrand never used the words in the original report, low confidence. He never used the word preliminary. Just wasn't in there. The only time the word low was even used when she quoted White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt describing the leaker as an anonymous, low-level loser in the intelligence community. So the only person who said that this was a low-level source was the White House Press Secretary. Excuse me, it's Natasha Bertrand. She's the same journalist the Pentagon fed its 51 intelligence professionals agree Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinfo piece. So she's a Democratic Party propagandist stooge. Yesterday, Chief CNN propagandist Aaron Burnett insisted that Natasha Bertrand's reporting came from the Pentagon, so the source was not political. As recently as yesterday, they were still covering this up. Listen.
All of this, of course, takes time. The most important thing to get it right. But Zach, just to emphasize from your reporting, Natasha Bertrand's incredible reporting on breaking this first, that this is the assessment that comes from the Pentagon, and it comes not from political leadership. It comes from military leadership. It comes from Central Command. That is their job, to look at the information they have, to give an initial assessment, and to adjust and change as more information comes in.
Why? I don't think Iran, I know the Iranians right now, the regime is a little bit on the defensive. I don't know if you noticed this, the Ayatollah Khamenei is tweeting again. I don't know if it's actually him, but whoever controls his various Twitter accounts is on the loose. And it's a pretty funny read because it's all just nonsense, gibberish stuff. But they're feeling, he declared victory over the great Satan, over the U.S., some other stuff. But there's no question the regime continues to be severely threatened. Another drone attack today in the city of Tehran. The Mossad, Israelis appear to be still conducting very limited but directed, targeted assassination strikes against key regime figures. This situation's not over, folks. Well, I don't know. I think Iran could, Robbie, think about this. I mean, I don't want to give them any ideas, but they're a little bit low on money, right? We just blew up their nuclear sites. Israel's finished off basically the top 25 people in government. Money's low, is my point. Morale is low. So maybe, and we Israel bombed the TV station, right? So just thinking out loud here, why don't they just stop producing their own propaganda and come up with a licensing agreement with CNN? Seems like the right cost-cutting move. Well, that's right. Our enemies don't need their own propagandists. They could just replace CNN. And I'm not here. Listen, folks, let me tell you, I'm not saying that our media ought to do what North Korean media does, and that no matter what, we sit around and go, it was the best. It was the greatest. Victory to the U.S. Our media should cover embarrassments like the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. My problem is that the very same people who tried to sugarcoat that, an actual embarrassment of epic proportion that had a disastrous series of consequences, including the loss of life of multiple U.S. service members and thousands of Afghanistan civilians. Those people, CNN, Burnett, Bertrand, all these clowns, glossed over that disaster. And then when we actually have a success and a victory, they won't give it. They won't give it up. They won't admit it because they hate Trump. They're obsessed with the orange man. That's my problem. I'm not saying I'm not saying our media should constantly, give only the colorful and good version of things, but they can't just, they can't do this. And they're doing it deliberately to undercut Trump. That's the point. That's the takeaway. So, listen, I think, well, Natasha Bertrand never revealed that the report was preliminary. She didn't. And that's the root of this. Do not let anybody tell you that this was, that CNN did this thing correctly. Here's the original video. I have it here. Here is the The low confidence and preliminary were never in CNN's initial television reporting. This is Tuesday, literally 2 days ago. Listen to.
What we are told is that based on the assessments of the damage that these bombs implemented on these nuclear sites, that as of right now, it does not appear that they ended or obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Instead, they only set it back by months, according to people who were briefed on the assessment. Now, these findings are obviously at odds with President Donald Trump's repeated assertions that the strikes, quote, completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, something that has been echoed as well by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. And so it appears that while these bombs did in fact inflict significant damage on the above ground structures at these nuclear facilities, the most sensitive and core parts of the nuclear program, which include the centrifuges, which include the highly enriched uranium, those do not appear to have been severely impacted, if impacted at all, with one of our sources who has seen the assessment describing all of those core components as largely intact. And so this is obviously going to raise new questions about, why President Trump and the administration have been saying repeatedly that Iran's nuclear program has essentially been ended, that it has been completely obliterated.
What? You see any low confidence words in there? Preliminary? No. It appears that while they targeted and successfully blew up the top portions of the site, the sensitive critical areas were left largely unharmed. This is how these people operate. And then when they get caught, then when they're wrong, they don't have the decency to come out and say, oh, we were wrong. Oh, we messed up. No, they don't do that. They then double down on their failure and continue to blab about how we really did actually put in these qualifying words. So anyway, I just want to tell you, this is a big bit of news today. Oh, speaking of things you're not going to see on CNN, Robbie, did you hear there was an insurrection at the Capitol? Well, I know you did because we've got a clip loaded about this, but wow. Interesting how this development is turning. I'll explain when we come back. Yes, there actually was an insurrection on the Capitol today. I'll tell you about it when we return. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. I'm here, don't worry. Sam Mirejovsky, host of the What's Right show, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Pleased to be with you this beautiful day here in Las Vegas. Those of you listening live and local, hello, hi. Nice to talk to you. And of course, those of you on the podcast, by the way, I'm loving Spotify, and I think I've heard positive feedback about the Spotify app. So we do the video on there. So you have the Sam Cam. There it is. I'm waving at it. The Sam Cam. You can observe me in my natural habitat here in my downtown Las Vegas studio. So that's one thing that you get with the Spotify app. Of course, YouTube as well. And then the one thing that's nice is on, if you've got your iPhone, you got your Apple Podcast app, we're on there, but no video. So if you don't like looking at me, which I can hardly blame you, the Apple Podcast app is for you. Excellent. So today on the Capitol, a bunch of deranged leftists, some of them in a crippled state, cruising in on electric scooters. These are wheelchairs. What do they call these? It's like personal mobility devices. Regardless, protesters showed up to stop the big, beautiful bill. These people came to the Capitol to stop the business of our legislative branch. And here's what it looked like. And again, some of you are seeing this, so you can see it, but I certainly can hear it.
That scene playing out moments ago, demonstrators protesting the big, beautiful bill being arrested on Capitol Hill. The video shows protesters being removed by U.S. Capitol Police. Police have cleared the protesters out of the Capitol building. But we'll keep an eye on this just in case anything else shakes out.
Pure pandemonium. Let me say that again. Pure pandemonium. Total craziness. Okay, and why am I playing this clip? For those of you watching, and if you've been to the Capitol, you know where that was filmed. That's inside the rotunda. Now, I just want to tell you a little bit more about how deceptive the media is. If you weren't already fully convinced of it. See, where is it? I got it in my stack here somewhere. Bear with me, folks. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. This is where they're talking about this attack on the Capitol. Okay, here it is. Okay, here's a CNBC report. It's NBC News. Capitol Police arrest dozens of people protesting Medicaid cuts in Trump budget bill. So now it's a protest. All right. And they arrested at least 33 people for illegally demonstrating in a congressional building. Okay, what congressional building? You read in the story and they're talking, it's against the law to protest inside congressional buildings, And they say that this was the Russell Senate office building. Can I just brief aside here a little bit about the Capitol? Many of you have visited the Capitol, and so just forgive me, I'm going to get into some basics here. You all know what the Capitol building looks like. Iconic American structure, a big, beautiful building, neoclassical style. Okay, and then, but not every office, not every congressman and every senator can fit his or her office staff and everybody into that building. So over time, they have built supporting office buildings around the Capitol building. And a series of tunnels and even trains, little mini subways, run between those buildings and the Capitol. The Capitol forming the hub of operations. So if you're a congressman, there's different, you may have an office that is, a half a mile away from the building or a mile away from the building, and you're just commuting underground for the most part through secure tunnels to the Capitol. Why am I saying this? If I'm looking at this video, there are literally people taking over the Capitol building, but the mainstream media is describing this as a minor skirmish, a protest that they admit is not legal to be done inside one of the office buildings. At no point, there's a protest in both. They literally, and the reason why the rotunda is between the Senate chamber and the House chamber. The rotunda is the big center part of the building where the cupola is. And that's what it is. Okay, so they literally went into the Capitol and they disrupted, and everybody's calling it right now a nice protest. And I'll be honest, I'm looking at the video of this versus the quote unquote insurrection of January 6th, 2021, and the people walking through and filing through the rotunda there, seem to have been a lot more peaceful than these folks. By the way, what do you do with a person in a mobility scooter when you have to go and arrest them? I'm looking at some of the video of this. It's pretty funny, Robbie. I apparently got this woman who is, I don't know if she's handicapped or if she's just kind of big, but at any rate, she's got one of those mobility scooters, and she's got her hands zip tied, and then they're still making her ride the scooter. So these are people protesting. These are the American Disabled for Attendant Programs is a group, ADAPT. And one of these photos is from the Hart Senate office building. Sure, Russell, Hart, they occupied it all. But this video I showed is from the rotunda. Okay. Just when you think you don't hate the media enough, here we go. Now, when we come back, speaking of the media is wrestling right now what to do with the socialist movement. I've been talking about this for the last couple of days. I do think it's an important point. And I was talking to another friend of mine today at lunch who was, again, trying to, I see a lot of the liberal people out there, these, I'm talking about old school Democrats here, are really trying to minimize this election in New York. And one of the things that most often repeated thing I hear is, well, it was, he just really got like 10% of the vote of the total electorate. And that is true. Yes, that is true. But it doesn't change the fact that socialism is ascendant in the U.S. And it doesn't change the fact that finally the chickens are coming home to roost, or decades of us here pushing socialism, liberalism, and leftism in our schools and universities. And that is a problem. So anyway, on that and some other interesting developments when we come back, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome, friends, to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism. Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam Mirejovsky here. And of course, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. My email, I do check my emails here even during the show, is sam@whatsrightshow.com. So I've been thinking about the socialism thing, all right? Obviously, socialism is becoming a dominant theory once again, a concept inside the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party becoming increasingly a political movement taken over by socialists, by left-wing radicals. And let's set aside the economics of it, which of course are ludicrous. One of the most dangerous components of this existentially to our country is permissive attitudes, positions, right, legal standings, enforcement of immigration. Modern leftism, in other words, the Democratic Party today versus the Democratic Party, say, just 20 years ago, one of the critical big differentiators, I think, is the way that the positions of the party officially on the subject of immigration. Socialists, leftists around the world, and now here also domestically, are all for illegal immigration. They want mass migration, legal or not. They don't care. They want as many people in the country as possible, preferably from places that are a little bit exotic. Now, the problem with this is, obviously there's a social problem that ensues. And by the way, I know a lot of you, I get angry emails from time to time from somebody, one of you, and I don't want to name any names, but get an angry email about how not all Democrats ... You're right. Not every single Democrat. Let me give you the up to the minute. This is about, 45 minutes ago. The U.S. House passed a bill. This is good news. I'm telling you, it's good news. Passed a bill ensuring that illegal aliens who drive drunk get deported. If you're an illegal immigrant, look, first of all, come on, this is not, if you're an illegal immigrant, you should get deported, period. But okay, you're an illegal immigrant, you get caught driving drunk, done, out. The bill passed with 246 votes. There were 160 people, congressmen, who voted against. All 160 of those votes were Democrats. My point is, it's not 10 Democrats in the House. It's not 20 Democrats in the House. It's not 35 Democrats. It's 160 Democrats. It's a majority of the Democratic caucus thinks that if you're an illegal, you drive drunk, you should stay. Now, the next question I get is, Sam, why is this an existential threat? Why is this something that, is make or break for us? And I saw this piece that I needed to share with you about Sweden. Sometimes it's easier to see these things in others than it is in ourselves. There is the police in Sweden there, the state security services did a comprehensive study investigation into their various gangs. Sweden, by the way, when I was growing up, Sweden didn't have gangs. The Swedes were, making Volvos, making Saabs, the cars and the fighter jets. The Swedes were making furniture. The Swedes were busy working on socialism. There it is. And that, ballooned, and I could say metastasized into the current state of Sweden that has flung open its doors to every undesirable element from the worst places of the world. Now they've got a gang problem. And in this report, in this investigation, that was, by the way, leaked anonymously to Sweden's largest newspaper, the police, the government tried to hide this, but it ended up getting leaked. They have a gang called Foxtrot. It's their largest criminal gangs, and they apparently, this is the lead bit of the story, have begun searching for drone operators to carry attacks against Israel and potentially also Israeli and potentially also American targets inside Europe. So they've metastasized from a street gang into more of a large-scale terrorist organization. So I was looking at this. The guy who leads this gang, his name is Rawa Majid, has been living in Iran for the past several years. He was recruited by the IRGC to carry out attacks against Israel and Sweden, Denmark, and Belgium. This gang has shot guns at Israeli defense companies, thrown hand grenades at Israeli embassies in Sweden and Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark. Swedish police have found traces of the gang looking for drone operators for violent attacks on various encrypted chat rooms. Now, our State Department has sanctioned this particular gang. They believe that they work for Iran. But I'm bringing this up because it's very easy for us to get lost in a conversation about socialism, economics, micro, macro, job market, the marketplace generally. But one of the most devastating impacts of socialism is that it has now morphed into this belief that you have open borders and you let everybody in because the radical leftists recognize that the only way that they're actually going to succeed in bringing down the West is not through fiery speeches, but rather through help of their more violent brethren. 160 Democrats want criminal illegal aliens in the country because they want the mayhem that will ensue from it. Explain to me why. Tell me this, and please email me and explain it to me like I am stupid. Why the Biden administration would allow the release of 700 Iranian nationals during the 4 years that Biden was in office, released into the U.S. This is crazy. The Border Patrol arrested 1,504 Iranian nationals from fiscal year 2021 to 2024. Of the 1,504 individuals who were arrested, 729 were released, about half of them. All the Iranians here are considered special interest aliens because of national security concerns. Remember that little story the other week where they did a roundup? They found, their sleeper cells, basically. They're like, we got sleeper cells. And then sure enough, they round up a bunch of Iranians. And they're like this Kurdish gang member and gang leader, in Sweden. These are people that have training from the IRGC. Now, I had a pre-dinner cocktail yesterday with a a friend of mine, name is Jeremy. He was in Iraq actually as a special operator. That's all I'm going to say about him. Special operator guy. And he tells me that the only thing that really scares him in life, he's not scared of, and they can do a lot of damage. The one-off, kind of bent kid who decides he's going to be a terrorist and strap a bomb to himself and go run into a crowd. Those people can do damage. The guy that he is most terrified of is the person that is trained by Iran to penetrate into the U.S., live here for a while, and then in a great calculating way, create an absolute, mass casualty event or strike on perhaps the Capitol in New York. I mean, it's an attack on our homeland. It's war. And why the Democratic Party today, and they certainly did it for 4 years under Biden, why they would allow this enormous national security breach is absolutely beyond me. And the only logical explanation for it, of course, is that radical leftists, socialists, communists, etc., believe that they've got to break down and destroy Western civilization so they can build up on the ashes of what's left their socialist utopia. It's deliberate, in other words. It's not compassion. None of this is compassion-based. If it was compassion-based, we'd work on a legal framework and seal up the border, prevent people from being exploited. But no, that's not what it's about. Get as many people in here, and hopefully we include wrongdoers and terrorists and people that were trained by hostile nations, and then fight like hell over every single one of them that Trump tries to deport. This is the most important story of our time. And this is, by the way, where Thomas Massie loses me, because it's not about every dollar in the budget. We should spare no expense to rid ourselves of the enemy within. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. So I have interesting development here to back up this this claim. I'm telling you, the new facet of socialism in the U.S., and it's even in Europe, it actually comes from the socialists in Europe, new socialists, is wide open borders. They want Western society. They want capitalism. They want our order, our structure, our way of life. They want it all to be consumed, okay, in the fire of ethnic warfare. And you think, by the way, interestingly, I get a lot of pushback on this. It sounds racist. Well, it is racist. And here's what's racist about it. The Los Angeles Times ran a piece back in, this was in 2016? Here's what it read. Latino gang members firebombed black residents to drive them out of Boyle Heights. Prosecutors allege. And it has a whole story. It's a whole thing by Kate Mather, Brittany Mejia, and Hector Becerra in the LA Times writing about this. Now, if you're the Democratic Party, I thought you care about minorities. I thought this was the party. Well, Biden told black people that if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black. And yet it was Biden that allowed these criminal aliens en masse to not just, come to America, but to remain in America and continue to perpetrate this type of violence. Now, in the news this week was a vice mayor of Cudahy. Cudahy is a crappy little town in Southern California. I'm sorry if you're from Cudahy. I'm sorry you're from Cudahy, and you should think about being from another place. But her name is Cynthia Gonzalez. Now, Cynthia Gonzalez turned some heads when on Tuesday she posted to her Instagram, then quickly deleted this emergency action message to the two leading gangs that operate in Cudahy, basically asking them to wage war on ICE. Hey, gang members, I thought you were here all about protecting the hood. Why aren't you doing something about ICE officers picking people up off the street? Have a listen.
Not for nothing, but I want to know where all the cholos are at in Los Angeles. 18th Street, Florencia. Where's the leadership at? Because you guys are all about territory, and this is 18th Street, and this is Florencia. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood. And now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up. We're out there like fighting our turf, protecting our people. And like, where you at? We're out here, the regular ones that have never been jumped in, out here calling things out, trying to organize people, trying to do the thing. So don't be trying to claim no block, no nothing. If you're not showing up right now, trying to like help out and organize, I don't want to hear a peep out of you once they're gone, trying to claim that this is my block. This was not your block. You weren't even here helping out.
By the way, she has a doctorate degree from UCLA. In what? I don't... Cholonomics? I don't know. Ghetto A money POS is what Cynthia Gonzalez is. Now, who is she talking about? The Florencia 13th Street gang that she's talking about, which operates in a district of southern Los Angeles, engaged underlings in, quote, this according to the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Los Angeles Times, cleansing their neighborhood of members and associates of African-American street gangs. The most disturbing aspect of the case is that gang members allegedly engaged in a series of attacks on rival African-American gangs that extended to innocent citizens who ended up being shot simply because of the color of their skin. This reported by then U.S. Attorney Thomas P. O'Brien. F-13, or Florencia 13, swears allegiance to the Mexican Mafia. Mexican Mafia shot callers have issued a green light for gang members to harass and attack any African-American found in a neighborhood. This is what Democrat socialists want. I don't look, and the thing that keeps like blowing my mind is, I mean, how can any, like, if you're Jewish and these people are all about the globalized the Intifada, okay, how can you vote for Democrats today? If you're black, how can you vote for Democrats? These people allow criminals that are literally going through historic black parts of Los Angeles, hunting and killing door to door African Americans. And the problem is what? Hashtag MAGA? Oh, and why am I bringing up the Intifada? Well, I'm glad you asked, because this Cynthia Gonzalez here with her degree in Cholonomics from UCLA is the one claiming, by the way, that the gang should come in here and go scare the hell out of ICE or whatever it is that she's saying. She's also one of the people responsible for making Cudahy the first California city to pass a Gaza ceasefire resolution. So this crazy biznatch is the vice mayor of Cudahy. On one hand is going, we got to stop Israel because they're ethnically cleansing Gaza. And on the other hand, she's putting up Instagram videos praising Mexican mafia affiliated gangs who for the past 2 decades have been on the record including in the LA Times. It's not like this is coming from, some MAGA source. From the LA Times and the Southern Poverty Law Center, engaged in ethnic cleansing in her neighborhood. And this is the new Democratic Party of 2025. We have now reached peak levels of crazy. Oh, but Sam, it's just one person. It's just this. It's just that. Okay. Believe them when they say what they say. That new mayor has said pretty much all of this stuff, right? He wants to globalize the Intifada. He wants, from the river to the sea. He wants socialism, democratic socialism, on the record for it. And you've got Chuck Schumer praising him and endorsing him. Jerry Nadler today, longtime Democrat congressman in New York City, praising him and endorsing Zohran Mamdani in his run for mayor. You think this is just a fringe movement, something that's just going to pass? This has to be stopped before it's too late. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Yeah, this is hilarious, Robbie. Apparently somebody out there posted this statistic thinking it was going to help them. Almost half the people currently in ICE custody have neither been convicted or charged of any crime. And only 6% of those detained undocumented immigrants have ever been convicted of homicide. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, having a great time here behind the What's Right microphone. I can't believe you pesky, bigoted MAGA Republicans rounding up all of these illegal immigrants. Only 6% of them have ever been convicted of homicide. Will you please cut this out? Do you know what absolutely gets my goat? If I admit any drug use to an immigration officer, say if I'm visiting Japan, get my passport, stand there at the window, good morning, just arrived in your country, please let me pass. And they ask me, have you ever taken any drugs, ever? And I say, yes. I've tried weed. Yeah, I did it. Yeah. Gone. I'm not even admitted. And by the way, technically, right, if you have any conviction of really any kind, even a DUI, there's most countries around the world will not accept you. And we're supposed to, I don't know what, accept these people coming into the country. It makes no sense. Now, here on the What's Right show, we practice common sense. I always mention that this program is about common sense conservatism. So 1 to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, here we are. And to me, there's nothing that is more common sense than if you're going to allow people into your country, you know who they are. I am obviously suspicious of any political party, any political movement, any political ideology that doesn't want to vet the immigrants and or visitors who come to this country, that instead works to normalize a system by which there's a flood of millions of people coming into the country who are simply not checked in any way, shape, or form. And then we're supposed to say, as citizens, as taxpayers here funding this insanity, we're supposed to say, oh yeah, no problem, good stuff. It's all good. We're great. I'm pointing this out. None of it makes any sense. Is my point. Okay, none of it makes any sense. It's all complete absurdity. And what I do think is the purpose behind it, of course, is to flood the country full of people that will cause mayhem, will cause problems, will cause an erosion of trust in society, and ultimately will create an opportunity for the new Democrats, for the new socialists to do their revolution. Now, I'll tell you, there's a development just now, moments ago, and vetting this for what it's actually all about. Apparently, there is a massive story in Israel Hayom's newspaper here. There's an agreement apparently coming to fruition between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump. Apparently, they agreed on a rapid end to the war in Gaza and an expansion of the Abraham Accords. So this is being reported. It's not yet confirmed because it hasn't been publicly agreed to. But according to many sources, Trump and Netanyahu had a phone call where they said, look, we're going to end the war in Gaza within 2 weeks. And 4 Arab states, this is a key thing, including the Emirates and Egypt, would jointly govern the Gaza Strip in place of Hamas. The group, Hamas's leaders would be exiled. All the hostages would be released. One of the things that will happen apparently here is that there will be some Gazans who want to leave. And if they want to emigrate, they will go to a handful of Arab countries. They won't go to Europe. They won't come to the U.S. I don't know. Listen, I'm telling you what's the scuttlebutt right now. The White House says 2 hours ago, by the way, that Syria will be one of the countries that will be joining the Abraham Accords. That's incredible. And there's been another development that apparently some Democratic lawmakers leaked classified initial intel on the U.S. strikes in Iran. So the leakers here, this is, by the way, I remember one of the things over the weekend, the Democrats said, why didn't you let us know? Why didn't you let us know? And then they found out that actually that the Trump administration did notify the Gang of Eight, and they were lying through their teeth that they hadn't been notified. And maybe they hadn't notified them as far in advance as they normally would. But remember, the strike on Iran was kept under wraps until it was over. And one of the, there's no question, right, that the Democrats right now, you take Chuck Schumer, for example, that his office would certainly leak out the strike, would do anything to cause damage to the Trump administration. So this is all just, stuff that's developing. But very important, by the way, make sure that no deal includes having Gazans come to the U.S. And I frankly don't even want to see Gazans come to Europe, because once they're in Europe, they'll gain European passports, perhaps more quickly than they would here. And then with European passports, we'll make it easier for people who we really do not want to come to the U.S., come here and be here on U.S. soil. Again, this is simple stuff. We do not want to. We cannot, try as we might, we cannot coexist with people who want us dead. It doesn't work. And whether we're talking about individuals with bad ideas, where we're talking about sleeper cells of people that were trained by the Iranians, by the IRGC, who are on the same level. And this is one of the points my friend was making, who was a special operator in the U.S. military, was telling me that these people that are trained by Iran are legit warriors. That one of the mistakes that we make is we poo-poo and talk down the Iranian military. The people that are in this, these people that are trained, these elite fighters, are as good as any of our Navy SEALs or Army Rangers. They're not to be trifled with. And if they're deployed as sleeper agents in this country, waiting for a command, that is bad news. I really hope nothing happens. If it does, watch CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times, Washington Post perform journalistic contortions trying to avoid any responsibility for that on the Biden administration, on the Democratic Party, and the Open Borders platform. No, I'm pointing it out. It's just something to think about. By the way, another little connection in here to the Venezuelan gangs, right? When you look at the Venezuelan gangs, they were trained. Remember, this is one of the things that these stupid liberal judges keep fighting in every one of these injunctions. They are constantly pushing back. These are just illegal immigrants. They deserve due process. And okay, fine. And we've talked about that, extensively. It doesn't mean that there's a big long court proceeding. It can be just, a magistrate of sorts, or even an officer, immigration officer, giving the go-ahead. But regardless, we have enemy combatants in the country that were trained by the military of one of our adversaries, and the judges in this country are standing up for those people's constitutional rights. We're under attack. These same judges would probably be fighting to keep IRGC members in the country. Trump not only has to fight these sleeper cells in the country, Trump also has to fight the sleeper cells left behind by the Democrats in our court system. It's absolutely frightening, the state of things. And I don't know what we would, can you imagine where we'd be with another 4 years of Kamala Harris if of the same agenda? Because Harris would have just continued the Biden years. The people behind her would be the same people. Oh, by the way, we'll get into this after the break. This is some little bit of development here with the Biden autopen. They're starting to, in Congress, sniff around the outer edges of this immense fraud, which is good because it's exactly what it is, an absolutely immense fraud that I think is going to end up, at least hopefully, get a few people who participated in some amount of trouble. Play you a clip earlier from the Capitol on just this point. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, back in a moment. Greetings, friends. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. SW just writing me that yesterday, apparently you heard that I said that I was not a big fan of of Bannon. Freudian slip of Steve Bannon, that some of my listeners probably are. SW writes, I get that, but things aren't always as they might appear. Bannon was simply the originator of the grassroots that definitely got Trump into office. Simply, his show was the genesis of the movement. Everything else was ancillary, even Elon. I believe that the level of cheating by the left was so significant that it had to be a landslide to win. Conservatives, real votes, versus the left states' fraudulent ballots. I agree he may have done some questionable things, but his game is win or lose. His constitutional republic is spot on. SW, I'm glad you sent this to me because I've always, and I disagree occasionally with my father on this because we usually are aligned 1,000%. What you're writing here about Bannon is true, and I say this on my program a lot, and I mean it, and I live it. If you're a smart person, and you guys all are, you understand this. Two things can be true at the same time. So when it comes to Bannon, on one hand, yes, Bannon had a pivotal role in the 2016, ascension of the MAGA right. Now, I will tell you, if you talk to Steve Bannon, I'm going to try to be delicate about this. If you talk to Steve Bannon, he thinks he has or had and continues to have a far greater role in all of this than he really, in fact, did or does. What's that, Robbie? You look at Bannon like the French in the American Revolution. He was there. He did good things. He's a brilliant guy. He's a slob. He's nasty. He has questionable hygiene. I can attest to that. But the thing that really rankles me is that he's buddy-buddy with a suspicious Chinese billionaire, and that he legitimately ripped people off in the building of that wall. Now, two things can be true at the same time. So, he did rip people off. I got some emails from people, including from friend Vicky, who said, but Sam, but he did build some portion of that wall. But okay, maybe not. But it really was a fraud. He pocketed a ton of money from that. Yes, it bothers me, I believe, that Bannon was targeted in that prosecution by prosecutors who went after him and then gave every person in the Biden family a pass. So I am okay with the Bannon pardon, for example. I'm not one of these people that think that was a bad thing. It's a zero-sum game. The people on the left are vicious and are perfectly willing to weaponize our justice system. I'm okay with the pardon. Same way or similarly that I'm actually okay with the pardon with our Michelle Fiore here in Las Vegas. Did she do what she is accused of doing, what she was convicted of? Yeah, probably. Was she targeted because she was pro-Trump by a Biden Department of Justice? Absolutely. Smack these people down. I don't like selective prosecution. I'm really happy about this email. See, guys, I do respond to these emails when they come to me during the show. It's a great topic. But I see Bannon now as devolving into a sort of a carny, and he's wrong about a lot of stuff. I don't spend time in DC. I'm not connected. I don't have Trump's cell phone number. I know people that know Trump. I'm not completely on the outskirts of things, but I'm not like dialed in the way Bannon is. I'm more right at times about a lot of things than Bannon is. And so somewhere in his brilliant mind, he has a brilliant mind. He's gone off the deep end. And I don't agree with him at all on the subject of Israel and Netanyahu. He's gone too far. So he's devolved into sort of a bizarre person. So that's what I will say about Steve Bannon. Now, I know that Mark Levin is about to burst a blood vessel over Bannon, and I'm not. That's not my style. I try to exercise some zen here on the program, so I can't get that agitated about it. All right. So, I wanted to mention this. I'm getting it. So the Biden autopen, there was a witness called to the House Oversight Committee, Neera Tanden, and she was the former director of Biden's Domestic Policy Council. She's one of the people that had the power of the autopen. Now, she gave a closed door interview. It lasted more than 5 hours. Here's what she said as she got out of that meeting.
A brief comment. Thank you. I just spoke with the House Oversight Committee, Majority and Minority Council. I answered every question, was pleased to discuss my public service, and it was a thorough process, and I'm glad I answered every question.
Was there an effort to disguise President Biden's condition?
Absolutely not.
And that's how it ended. That was one question. Was there an effort to disguise Biden's condition? Absolutely not. Now, according to people that were there in the thing, she said that her role as staff secretary and senior advisor to the former president between 21 and 23, she had authorization to use the autopen. She had also apparently very limited interactions with Biden, and she described an approval process that left her in the dark about who specifically was giving final approval on the decisions to use the automatic signature tool. She testified that the approval for the use of autopen signature should send decision memos to members of Biden's inner circle. But she also added that she was not aware of what actions or approvals took place between the time she sent the decision memo and the time she received it back. Basically, nobody has idea. It wasn't like Biden said to her, "Hey, Neera, I need you to sign those liners. I'm going to go eat an ice cream cone." It wasn't that. I just think this is going to start to stink. Now, I have no faith in House Republicans getting to the bottom of this. Now, the Trump DOJ, I think they can start to figure some of this out. Now, we have gotten, as a country, so far down into some crazy land that even a ESPN reporter cannot praise the glory of America. Sunday, just as our B-2 bombers were coming back from Iran, during an Indiana versus Las Vegas game, WNBA game, the announcer, the WNBA announcer, Rebecca Lobo, said, America's great. It's what's great about America. Listen, this is the comment. This is the original comment as it aired on ESPN this past weekend.
So they disagree with you. They do, and I disagree with them, and that's fine. That's what makes America great, right, Pam Ward? I should rephrase that, yes. But yeah, I did think...
opinion are perfectly
Yes,
fine.
That's a better way to say it. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. I have to apologize for that. I didn't mean that's what makes America great. I meant, yeah, that's what makes us all stronger, whatever. Absolute insanity. That's what ESPN is all about now. And by the way, she was forced to make a subsequent apology. Producers from ESPN forced her to apologize and retract the comment. This is what the leftists are hung up on. They can flood the country full of IRGC commandos. That's fine. People here in the country who have 6% only have committed murders. Nothing big. But gosh forbid that you say during a sporting event, that's what makes America great. That's the crime. Unbelievable. All right, folks. See you tomorrow. Be well out there.